Just Paul with you, 11 o'clock straight up. I am joined across the deck now, Supervisor Roger Gitlin. How you doing today, Roger?
Good morning, Paul. How are you?
Make sure I got everything here.
And I'm doing well.
Are you doing well? That's good. You know, we've been talking for 15 minutes, and I was going, we need to kind of stop talking so we don't do all our talking before we go on the air.
It never seems to be a problem with me, Paul. I seem to be like a faucet. Turn it on, and then, God, we've got a flood in the house.
You're not a faucet. You're what's called a good interview. You just go, hey, Roger, how you doing?
Well, I'm going to, what's the old story, the old adage, tell it like it is.
Well, one thing I'd like to do, we were sort of doing this right at the end of the conversation as the song was ending. We've got contentious things to discuss today, but let's start with the things that the board is doing that go underappreciated in our community. And I agree with you entirely. We don't know the good stuff that you accomplish.
The board actually functions... I wish it would be perfect. It actually does some good things. And I wanted to bring to the attention, it kind of got under the radar system and didn't get reported in the newspaper. But the board, on my suggestion, I'm the representative from the county at the Pelican Bay State Prison Advisory Board. So we go and we meet bi-monthly. And we talk about issues at the prison, what they're doing, and there are a lot of wonderful programs on there. That's a subject. And the clear rule is... due to federal court order, the prisons are getting emptied, and that is the fact of life, and we are pretty much through that process. Now, these people are coming out of their service, their sentences, and we want to mainstream them into our economy so they don't reoffend. So one of the things that the prison did in 1989 when it opened was it provided gratis to the cities and counties free labor. And the community work group, level 1 work group, would go out and do any number of things, cleaning the cemetery, you name it. If there was a project that needed to be at zero cost to the county. Well, that kind of disappeared in 1997. So since I've been on this particular assignment with the Board of Supervisors for the last 2 years, I have lobbied to resuscitate that program on some kind of a modest level. Now, it obviously means some kind of a financial commitment from our county to do so. And we asked that. We proffered that at our last meeting. I made the request that our county allocate a modest amount of money on this upcoming year's budget, which will be approved, hopefully, will be approved on the next meeting, which is the 12th. And it's to donate $1,000 for litter abatement on the median on the 101 freeways directly north of this community.
And this was an interesting thing you pointed out. There's a very limited number of people who can operate in any capacity on the median of a federal highway.
That's correct.
And state highway, rather.
And that's exactly correct. Otherwise, we would have had a take a bite out of blight crew out there.
Sure.
And we'll be doing it all the time, as we do on the side of the freeways. Some people mix up the side of the freeways. For instance, I'm a member of the Lions Club, and we have every 6 weeks, we do our 2 or 3 mile stretch of litter on, I believe, the east side of the 101, just north of McNamara Road.
Okay.
And then there are a number of other great sponsors. The county also does this on its county streets, where the Rotary and other groups abate litter, and we want to keep our community free of litter. But the median's a different kind of a creature. No one, and that's a very hard, fast rule for public safety reasons, no one is permitted on the median except for state workers. So I put that 2 and 2 together, and I said, aren't inmates at Pelican Bay State Prison, Level 1, are they not wards of the state? Yes, they are. Okay, why don't we start a program? We'll contribute this and get these guys out in the community, break a sweat, and keep our median clean. Now, is this a priority? Well, yeah, I think it is. Number one, the prison loved the idea. The warden, they all said this is a great idea, and we're gonna move forward on this.
That's
and of course, in government, it moves a little slower. It doesn't move just because Gitlin says like to start it Monday.
Yeah, well, and on top of that too, $1,000 is not a lot to ask for a situation.
And our board, and in my credit to them, and I acknowledge this, I was pleasantly surprised that they embraced this, and it is happening now. With this in mind, I said, why not bring in the city? Now, the question was asked, do you own the median? No, that's Caltrans property. But clearly, this agency, Caltrans, they're wonderful people. They're great people. They're hardworking. They're short-staffed. That's how it is in government. And they get out there to do what they do whenever they can. When Supervisor Gitlin says, "Can you please get out there?" But it's pressing on them, and they welcome the help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we just need to get this program going a little bit modestly, once a month, let's say. We get a crew out there. We abate that 3-mile stretch litter. And people who ingress and egress our community from the north or leaving from the south going north toward Brookings or coming in, they will see a beautiful green belt. Mm-hmm. And that defines our community. So when I see the people who are looking around and they say, this is a really pretty little community, when you see that we look, we let this go. It's called the broken window theory. If you see a broken window there and people look at it and say, well, there's another broken window, and we have boarded up buildings, this is not good for our local economy.
No.
And by doing this is a definite step in what I call economic development. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm saying a lot of things to you at one time, so as the faucet's turned on, our county is in great dismay. The only way I'm saying, we're 57 out of 58 counties in economic growth in the state. Now, we have a negative economic growth. From Sacramento, the report is 5.7% below zero. So we're actually losing our existing income. Now, do we sit around and say, woe is me, we can't do anything about that? Or do we change this around? And I've said this since I got into office and moved up here and then eventually found myself in public service. This is a wonderful, fabulous place. I just see it with an incredible enthusiasm when I see about its future. It's 105 degrees everywhere else around the state of California and all across the country. You know that's hot, humid, fires everywhere. We've got 65 degrees and clear skies.
Yeah, especially this year, we kind of came in under the radar. Everybody else is like in dire situations, so we're having a nice little summer.
Isn't that? And that's good.
Yeah.
People want to come here.
Yeah, but at the same time, as you know, and this I think motivates you too. I know people who are relatively local, who maybe are like, Arcata, Eureka, who travel up and down the coast on a regular basis. I knew one person who takes Elk Valley Road just to go around junky little Crescent City.
Well,
and I'm like, wow, that's a shame.
It doesn't surprise me. I have some issues with the shopping carts strewn about our town, and of course, people less fortunate than you and I sitting here acting irresponsibly, and it's almost not even their fault. Mm-hmm. And that is systemic homelessness, which I'll be happy to transition into in my position on this. I have great compassion for the folks who are suffering. Mm-hmm. Now, I ask myself, who makes up this community of homeless? And there's really 4 or 5 groups of people. Number one, mentally ill people who have suffered from mental illness. Number 2, we have drug addicted people. We know because we see the needles when we do the cleanups. Third one is alcohol addicted. There's a very small segment of group 4, which are people who have just genuinely fallen through the cracks of life, with children. And the 5th group is criminals. That's who make up this growing community of systemic homelessness. Now, I want to see these people getting help, but clearly 3 of those groups of people do not have free will. If you ask them, would you please come out of the bushes? We have a place for you to take a shower and a meal. They say, no, I don't want to do that. And then we walk on. And until and when and if our Department of Health and Human Services in Sacramento realize this, all we're doing is spinning the wheels. You must mandate the services. Well, Supervisor, don't you know we have a Constitution and you can't do that? I'm aware we have a Constitution.
Well, yeah, and sometimes you can do that.
But there clearly has to be an intervention which is more than voluntary.
Let me just jump in and ask your impression then about the local organizing committee from True North with Dr. Caldwell and some other folks, Sam Bradshaw and Mike Thornton.
Yeah.
Came and you guys voted unanimously in support of their. Can you address that? I mean, because Their whole deal is just to get everybody to the table, pledged in good faith to end homelessness. Whatever that ends up looking, there isn't like an end. They don't have the answer. They just want to get everybody who wants to contribute to that to the table, and that seems a novel sort of approach to me. I was pleasantly surprised at the 5-0 vote. Do you see that as just another resolution, or is that actually an avenue that you're willing to go down and explore?
Well, first of all, I see it as another resolution, but I support it. There's a little bit, we're going to put some words, some actions behind these words. I know Kevin Caldwell very well, and I know the folks who are there. They have good hearts and good intentions, and I support that. But and by the way, the same resolution was passed by the city,
yes,
which was the other night, and they passed a similar. But they're words. They're just words until we put into action real therapy, real systemic intervention. And that comes back to the same thing I said before, is there has to be some mandates, some compulsory mandate to say, excuse me, sir, we see we want to take you out and get you a hot shower and hot bath or a clean meal. And someone who is clearly deficient, mentally ill, or on drug or alcohol addiction, he doesn't have clear thought. He says, no, don't leave me alone. I don't want you to bother me. And then that's respected. And I think a sign of a real compassionate community, of which I consider myself part of that, says we need to help you in spite of yourself. And that's the key thing to making this success. So I'm saying this, and I've said this before, that words are fine, but I'd like this to be more than just words, Paul. And the words are soon forgotten. Oh, another resolution which has no teeth to it. I'd like to actually see us help these people. Now, as you know, I went through a surgery recently, and
how is your back?
I'm doing well. As a matter of fact, the doctor said some very interesting things. A neurosurgery, I had a spinal fusion. And I'm 71, and I'm not as young as I used to be, but we went through San Francisco, and that's where I had a UCSF. And I see what I saw in San Francisco shocked me.
It is a different place, even from when I lived there. You're absolutely right.
It's unlivable.
Yeah.
What's
the number? Something like 30,000, at least, homeless people living on the streets?
You can. I mean, it was so shocking. And I actually saw people in businesses in front of them doing things that... And then there's no help. Now, I don't want to see Crescent City and Delaware County be subject to even a modest kind of example of that. But clearly...
But we have been.
Okay, yeah, but it's getting worse.
Yeah.
Can anybody out there tell me we're actually solving this homeless problem?
No.
But then you have to look back in the reasons. And again, I'm a little older than you, so I'm going to give you a little bit of history, which you probably already know, is where did this systemic homeless problem come from in the beginning?
Closing of the mental hospitals in the 1960s and 70s in California.
That's pretty good. I'm impressed, Paul Kritz. Well, it's actually Governor Reagan. Governor Reagan. Who are you talking about, the president? Yes, I'm talking about the president. Governor Reagan, when he was governor from 1966 to 74, by federal court order, Supreme Court order, closed the mental health hospitals. I think there were 8 or 9 of them in the state then. And he says, these folks are going home to their families. That lasted about 10 minutes. And that's your first generation of systemic homelessness.
And you have subsequent creations of things like the network of regional centers, of which we have one here, to address that very dearth in our society. And it addressed for people of need, for people who needed intervention of some kind, physical handicaps, mental handicaps, but it didn't help the homeless. And that was sort of seeded even more so, I think, because the society came together to address this deficiency in the social network and the social net. But homeless in mass kind of fell through. That's my understanding.
It is, and I agree with you. And that's exactly, and it continues to fall through these huge gaps. I bring to the attention, Delaware County has $416,000 available to help the mentally ill and house them. That is money that has been unspent. Well, why is it unspent now?
Yeah, why is it unspent?
It's because now they want to devote more money into No Place Like Home, which is another government program. So they're accumulating. Meanwhile, the people who need this help are not being served. And that's been for several years now, that this mental health board has had this money and has been reluctant to spend it. Well, it's only $416,000, but
For a population of 500 homeless or so in Delaware County, that could make a lot of leeway.
You could actually buy a building.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
you could buy an apartment building.
A quick question: where's your demographic breakup of homelessness? Where does that come from? The groups that you mentioned.
Well, I've done my research and I've looked into the number of counties who have looked at this, and I'm told. It actually comes from a former supervisor in L.A. County years and years ago. He's since retired, named Michael Antonovich. And Supervisor Antonovich, when I used to live in Santa Clarita, I had great admiration. And he said he provided me with the information that said, these are the people that make up the systemic homeless problem. And he articulated it in a way that made sense to me because I've had that supported. Because when I go out and I see folks in our community, we obviously see a large segment of people who suffer from mental illness. We see drug needles. We see the little alcohol bottles when we do these cleanups. Occasionally I'll see someone who just doesn't belong there and they can't stay anywhere. They're in their car or what have you. Yeah. And I see no shortage of criminals who prey on these people. Now, that's been supported by the original thesis that this is who make up. Now, I don't think you're seeing people who have jobs doing this. It's pretty easy. It's common sense thinking this is the group. Now, is the group growing? That should be the question we all should ask. And the answer is yes. It's growing quite rapidly. And we have a state, which is really the source of where this is all going to get mitigated. They are hell-bent on fixing this with more money. I don't think money is the issue. I think the issue is devote some funds to this, but compel someone, you may not stay in the bushes. That no trespassing sign we're going to enforce. Well, then you get into law enforcement. And law enforcement has taken quite a hit as what it can and cannot do. There's AB 109, there's Prop 47, there's Prop 57. I'm not quite sure what a felony is today, Paul, but it certainly isn't what it was a few years back when you committed a break-in crime. Now you break into someone's home and you don't steal $1,000 worth of goods or you're unsuccessful. That's not a felony. That's a misdemeanor. Hello, there's a lot. Common sense is not very common in Sacramento. So these are issues which strike me. I'm just a regular person who sees things that are not right, and I try to offer solutions. And sometimes they're embraced, and sometimes they're not. But it doesn't mean we're going to stop calling on this and advocating for the people who follow the rules and say, Supervisor Gitlin, you said you're going to work to improve the quality of my life, and we do that. Yeah, we do that. I don't know. I chafe at the idea of compelling people to do anything, but I do also understand that even my experience of homelessness and having lived for a lot of years in the Bay Area, and specifically in Berkeley and going to school there, and working on Telegraph Avenue, my experience of the homeless there was that to a person, and I'll even say to a man, because they were male, they were homeless by choice. By choice, by drugs. That was what I have met in all the homeless people I've come in contact with. I think one person who was employed and living in their car and in dire straits. So there's obviously there's a disconnect between how some folks break down the homeless population and how you break down the homeless even how I break down the homeless population just based on my own experience with them. So I guess what I sort of fall back on now is what like True North is trying to accomplish in that, we can have these differences of opinion, differences of experience, whatever. The goal now is to just all of us sit at the table and work in good faith together. And so I'm on board totally with that.
That's beautiful.
But Paul, I want to see results.
Sure, exactly. And you can't just
as a citizen in this community and wanting to maintain the high quality of life that we all enjoy here, I just don't want to see words. I want to see real results that says at the end of a 6 or month or 1 year or 2 year period of time, we've actually tackled this problem. I'm not so sure Delaware County alone can do this with its limited resources, but there clearly has to be a consensus of how we address this systemic homeless problem, because clearly it's growing.
Okay, so this then begs the next big question for me. Are you capable of being part of that consensus? Because you have likened yourself to a bull in a china shop, and right now with the cannabis working group, and you're calling for disbanding of that working group. Can you compromise with others?
Okay, there's compromise in me on certain subjects. Now, let me say to the audience that's listening in here, I differentiate between 215, which is medicinal marijuana, and the application thereof, and recreational marijuana. They are two entirely different products. And people who contact me on Facebook or contact me, why don't you, my mother is suffering and she has this and you're going to take away her marijuana. No, I'm not. I actually voted for that, and I believe, even though the people dispensing it don't have the letters in back of their name to do this, I believe that if someone is suffering, that is a whole different picture, and you must offer them relief. Now, the words recreation and marijuana do not fit together in the same sentence. And it is clearly a demarcation line. It's yes, you support it, or no, you don't support it. There is no gray area here. And I am of that opinion that the implementation, the mainstreaming of recreational marijuana will cause Del Norte County great harm. We see it going on in Humboldt County. We see it going on in some of the mistakes, some of the problems that have ensued in the state of Colorado and in Oregon. And I don't want to see it here. Now, Supervisor Gitlin, don't you listen to your constituents? Of course I listen to my constituents. But I have said to them, from the day I was elected once and reelected in 2016, I do not support this. So if you're voting for me, I want you to know exactly where I stand on the issue of recreational marijuana and Prop 64. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. So this is not a surprise, Paul, when I say I will not compromise on the issue of recreational marijuana. Now, I'm not sure whether I'll win or not. I'll prevail or not. I don't mean win. Because I think the children of Del Norte County may very well thank Supervisor Gitlin for fighting the way he is.
Why do you draw that line there between recreational, between 215 and 64?
I've seen the abuse firsthand of what marijuana does to people and to children especially. And I know the irresponsibility of some parents to allow their children to have access to this is a bad thing for kids. It takes away their options. I've seen children on the way to going great things in life. They get involved with some kind of a drug, and marijuana is a class 1 drug. And I see that it's changed their life in a negative way. I've seen this. Now, I've had people say, no, it hasn't. It's embraced them. And I said, no, I'm going to disagree with you. And I cited, and I don't want to do this over. We all know what drugs can do to people. Marijuana is an entry-level Class 1 drug. Now, what we haven't addressed here, and I know you're smirking.
I'm smirking because that has been so disproven. Study after study.
We're going to have a healthy disagreement on this.
That's like a 1950s thing to say, that it's a gateway drug. That's
okay. Now,
I just can't go there with you.
And you're right. You can disagree with me. I have different data, and we don't drink from that same trough. Now, having said that, the federal government has banned this product. It has not embraced this product. And I had one email person, Facebook person, who said, well, they're not enforcing the law, and I interpret this, and I interpret that. And he had so many ifs and conditions and why don't you modify your point of view and get on board with the federal government of ignoring the problem? Well, I'm not going to do that. Until and when it is ever legalized, the Class 1 drug is mainstreamed, where you can actually do business with checks and credit cards and have it delivered with UPS trucks. You can't do that now. It's all cash business. The bank, the state has failed to create a 930 went into, they put it off the calendar because they couldn't form a state bank to do this. Now, I'm saying this until and when and if the federal government gets on board with embracing this product, it is illegal. I'm holding up my right hand, everybody. That's an oath I take, and we take 2 oaths. One to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and one to uphold the Constitution of California.
Why is medical marijuana okay with you then?
Okay, now, I've come to terms with that. I've come to terms with that, and it is, to me, a compassionate component that people who are suffering, in many cases, terminal people are not going to live a lot of time. They have cancer. I've turned a blind eye to that. I have in my own mind saying this is not right. I cannot sit and let someone suffer if I have a say on it. So my position is, and it still is the same, it's consistent. Recreation and marijuana are oxymorons. They don't belong in the same sentence.
But why? Okay, so you oppose recreational marijuana just simply why? Because kids can get a hold of it?
Yeah, and other things. It hurts people. I know that it does. We have enough drugs in our community, and the argument to say, well, what about alcohol, or what about this, or what about that, is a specious, empty argument. There's no question in my mind that if you mainstream recreational marijuana, you're going to see a real spike in the DUIs, driving under the influence, which we already have a problem with alcoholism on this. Now you're going to see it and that's already been proven in Oregon and Colorado. They have a real spike in this, and that's going to take out a lot of innocent people, for people who are driving under the influence of marijuana.
So the Facebook thread that you had me look at here from last night, you made a big deal about it being illegal on the federal level, and that's one reason why.
Yep. That's correct.
How can you do that and still back medical marijuana? Because that also is illegal.
Because
on the
that's
federal
my
level.
compassionate side of me. I don't have that same share of compassion for people who just want to get high.
Okay.
Now,
all right, but see that also takes the legs. That takes the legs out from under your argument about the federal.
You're bringing up
stance.
an argument when I'm watching someone suffer, someone who has cancer, someone who has months to live. And I'm saying, no, you can't have your marijuana. I'm uncomfortable with that position. Clearly, and that's what I said, the line of demarcation, this is not an issue when you have a healthy young person who wants to embrace this as some kind of a recreational or pleasure item. Again, I don't equate it to alcohol. There's similar negative effects.
Sure.
Alcohol is a depressant, and drugs are stimulants. They do different things onto the brain.
It's an hallucinogen, is what marijuana is.
And I don't.
Just logically, it's inconsistent to say you don't back Prop 64 because marijuana is not legal at the federal level, but 215 is okay because you're compassionate. It's what you're justifying not backing Prop 64 and recreational marijuana with, you can't apply to your own logic with 215 because it doesn't work. You can't.
There's an exception in my conscience. That's
so that
correct.
Just makes that delineation of Prop 64 and your logic behind that seem just as arbitrary as any other arbitrary line drawn. Okay. If you nod to that, if it's a judgment call based on you, you're a human, you make judgments, that's what you do, you're elected to be in office and make judgments.
Indeed.
Then doesn't it boil down that this is solely your judgment if the majority of people in your district voted for Prop 64?
I'm not sure what the majority of the people voted for on Prop 64.
Alyssa Northrup is. She has the numbers.
Okay, I know. I saw the numbers.
Okay.
I'm not sure what people thought they were voting for. I have issues with it. I obviously voted no on 64, but you
thinking that they weren't informed in their vote? Is that what you're saying?
I think there was the medicinal element involved there. But let me say this, Paul, with regard to the Prop 64. I am not a robot. We, as electeds, are not robots. And I know members of our Board of Supervisors, and I'm going to gesture here, they put their finger up in the air, and they see which way the wind is blowing.
He is doing this,
and then they turn toward where the wind is blowing, and they speak.
Okay.
Now,
all right.
That's not me.
That is also, again, a Roger Gitlin likening of a certain... I have talked to the other supervisors who've been on Cape, and we've talked a lot about this. This is something that I wanted to ask you about today. What is your role as an elected official? Is it to represent your constituents or to represent yourself?
No, I think it's to represent what's in the best interests of our community.
Says who?
Roger Gitlin.
There you go. So,
okay.
And
that's why you're voting for me.
Yes.
Yes. But Paul, this is important.
And I agree with what you're saying.
Before you move on to this, let me say this. When I knock on someone's door and I asked for their vote.
I'm the one who knocks.
Okay.
I've been watching Breaking Bad. Sorry.
No, I have a reputation of going on. You obviously know I knock on people's doors.
Yes, I do.
You don't live near the Oxford House, do you?
No, I don't. But I knock on people's
doors and I ask them what's on their mind. I do this periodically throughout my district. And I tell them what I think. I ask them what they think. And I've met many people who are supporting of recreational marijuana, and I meet many people, and it's probably the people who talk to me, who oppose it. And I get lots of phone calls from all over the county saying, thank you for standing up for us. You're the only one. Now, I look at this and I say, what's in the best interest of the community? I will do what's in the best interest, including systemic homelessness. I absolutely believe, this is not personal, but this is a core value, and I try to communicate this to people. I have a core value with regard to this issue of recreational marijuana. I oppose it, and I'm being up front with you folks and telling you from day one I've been this way. Don't expect me to change. So here's the answer to your question, Paul. You don't like me. You don't appreciate it. Don't vote for me.
There you go. And I this is something I completely. This is a difference of approach. That I'm not saying one is better, one is the other. This is the difference between being a method actor and being a star actor, right? Of being an individual or being somebody who wants to represent their constituent. And it's just a difference to an approach to office. And I've asked Chris about this. I've asked Lori. I've asked the other supervisors. Are you there to represent your constituents, or are you there to sort of be an individual on a board to make judgment calls as an individual way? And some will say that no, they're there to represent their constituents.
I don't think it's an exact science. Let me say that.
No, and it's probably much more of a balance between the two. Exactly.
I have to put my head on the pillow at night and say, did I do a good job today? Mm-hmm. And I do, and I feel I have. I'm very proud of my record in the 6 years that I've been supervisor in the county of Del Norte, and I will continue to be who I am. I won't say, oh, well, okay, you're right. Okay, boom, I'm going to vote for it because my constituents are representing it. It begs the question of, are you just pandering to people so you can get their vote when you run again?
That's one likening of it. Another likening is, are you being responsive to your boss, who are the people who voted you into office? There's two different ways to look at that, and they're equally valid in my eye.
Well, you bring up a very interesting subject. I don't know how long we have here, but again, I was subject to a recall recently. Mm-hmm. I might add the adjective frivolous to that because there was no basis for what Gitlin and or Berkowitz did to incur this. As a result of this unsuccessful attempt to supplant me, which had no reason other than he needs to blend his opinion with ours. And it happened to come from none other than the vice chairman, Jesse Davis, of the Cannabis Working Group. Well, you don't have enough to do. Now you're going to try to recall Gitlin unsuccessfully. Now, as a result of that, I'm seeing that there are people who are trying to bully me. Well, that's not going to work with Gitlin. Again, I've been accused of being the master bully. Well, I'm the party of one. They're all hanging around and hiding behind each other. Gitlin's bullying me. Now, what Mr. Davis did, and he had some tepid support from those in the community, were people who say, we don't want him there. So we're going to interrupt the election process. And then we're going to try to recall him, which it was abysmally unsuccessful. They didn't get the signatures to even present it to have an election.
Well,
and the same thing was Bob.
All of the recall efforts were abysmally unsuccessful.
Which brings up the issue of my issue with the triplicate, as long as you don't mind my talking about it.
I do want to get back to the working group eventually.
I do want to have that consensus. Can I talk about what took place?
Yeah.
Well, when I was contacted by a reporter from the triplicate on the Monday evening, before the article appeared Tuesday about Gitlin's being recalled, he says, what's your opinion on it? I said, I don't even know what's going on. Well, you're being recalled. Well, I don't know that. I have no comment. And it's in the paper the next day. So, unbeknownst to me and a separate entity, there are folks who started a recall on Councilor Keim for her inappropriate statements regarding the trip to Japan. Mm-hmm. And I will be happy to repeat what that was, and to Lori Cowan for their own reasons. I had nothing to do with that, no DNA on it whatsoever. So they too paid their fees, and I was waiting for some kind of an article in the triplicate. Well, 1 day goes by, and then 5 days goes by, and then 7 days goes by, and still no article. So I call up the publisher and the editor. Why is this not? Oh, we're short-staffed. Now, you have to understand, Paul, you're not short-staffed when you want to go after Gitlin. You got all the staff in the world to do that. But you are short-staffed when another one comes up. So that prompted me to write the letter to Mr. John Costa, ownership. Now, people have really screamed at me, oh, you did, and then they brought it up at the board of supervisors, and, you misled everybody that you represent the board. No, there's a picture of me and my stationery and my issue with the editor, Robin Fornoff, and I wanted him removed. And I made that case to the ownership of the newspaper. Well, here's the result, fans, of everyone out there as a result of that. The board, they separated themselves. They identified me in a letter as Roger Gitlin, not Supervisor Gitlin. They did everything in violation of their own rules, and I've demanded an apology. Supervisor Chairman Howard says he's in violation of AB 1234. No, I am not. My hours are complete and current. I want that apology. Whether I get it or not is not clear that that'll ever happen. But clearly I feel I've been wronged. And I felt like I was slandered and libeled in that letter, both issues.
So their issue with the you using the seal and having the appearance of being...
It was a specious issue. It made no sense because it was clearly a letter from me and me alone. Now, as a result of that letter, I met with the publisher of the newspaper. For you imagine this is a long 2 hours. She met with me for about 3 hours and heard me verse, line, and period and sentence on my issues with the newspaper. Now, as a result of that, we have a different newspaper today. That's the reality. There are things in this newspaper that never would have appeared.
Really?
Before.
How so? How's it changed?
Well, the headlines alone. How about my 1,000-word Coastal Voices pieces?
Yeah,
the recall is over.
First.
You think that would have appeared had I not? Well, first of all, it's much longer. It's more than 600
so
words.
Are you? And they also start publishing like letters from Sam Straight again.
Absolutely,
so
and I was on that band. Now,
are you taking credit for?
Changed?
Did you loosen up the triplicate? Is that
I believe the ownership said, "Get Gitlin off my back." That's what I believe. And now I commend Kim Fowler, the publisher, for going ahead and making this newspaper equal. You can certainly criticize me, and they'll do that. But do it fairly. You do for one, do for the other. Don't ignore this. Don't have an editorial on the Saturday night before a Tuesday election in November 16th about Gitlin represents himself as a Democrat in a voter slate guide. That was an editorial. I had no opportunity to answer back. Now, that particular gesture, my absentee ballots came in. I had almost 60% of the vote. I ended up with 53% of the vote winning in my reelection. And I contend it is because of that irresponsible editorial. Now, you have to do for one, you have to do for the other. That's what a newspaper is supposed to do.
And actually, by law, with election coverage, too, you have to do
Well, it didn't happen that way. Now, I'm sitting here today as a supervisor reelected, and I will tell you that I see a new triplicate, and I resubscribed. And I'm telling you all that. I did. I sent a letter, and I said, she asked me to give her another chance, this is Kim Fowler, and I said, okay. And I resubscribed, and I'm encouraging all of you folks out there, give the newspaper a chance. There's a new day here. It's a new newspaper, and they're going to deal with things fairly. It isn't just, we don't like your letter, we're going to change this word, we're going to change that word, we're going to take the oomph out of your letter, and then people get turned off. Now Sam Straight's back in there, Donna Westfall, people who were banned. That's inexcusable.
That's the one thing that's always troubled me when I open this small town newspaper, and you open it up, and we've got on the opinion page, we've got 2 columns from people who don't even live here and no letters. And I'm like, really, this should kind of be the reason you exist, is to have local views on this page.
Paul, you and I, obviously, we see the world differently, but I will fight to the nail for your right to say what you want to say.
That's exactly right.
And we may not agree at the end of the day, but I'm At the end of that day, I'm saying he has the right to say these things as long as it's truthful and as long as it's not, you're not doing it viciously, you're doing it to make your point. You have to be heard. The Roger Gitlins have to be heard. The Paul Kritzes have to be heard. People have a right to, this is their newspaper. The Western Communications may own it, but it's the community's newspaper. And it's vital that we have a fair press.
All right, Cannabis Working Group.
Yep.
Let's see. We've been talking for 40 minutes. I should at least tell anybody who's tuned in, if you don't already know, you tuned to KFUG Community Radio, 101.1 FM. Online, kfugradio.org. Joan Miles' husband, Bob, told me I don't do that enough when I'm interviewing people. So, working group. It will not be on the agenda this coming week, correct?
I don't know that. I think it...
I got breaking news.
I think it will be on the agenda.
All right.
I was told that it will be on the agenda.
Really? Okay. All right. Because what I've got was... I asked Chris Howard on Facebook if it will be on the agenda, and he said no, it will not. I told him if he wants it back on, he is welcome to approach the full board with the request. So, parliamentarian-wise, what does that mean for you then?
Well, first of all, let me remind everybody about a certain rule we have on from the Del Norte County Manual. Any supervisor can have an item placed on the agenda for discussion and action. Now, upon consultation with the board, the board chair. Now, I'm disappointed because you're telling me this for the first time. So he wants me to address the board, and I have to find the vehicle and way to do that because clearly I'm not on the agenda. You don't speak just because you want to. So what does that mean? Do I have to go around to the public comments and make my 3-minute discussion on why I don't think this is this?
Which I have not made up my mind if that's a completely ludicrous move or a beautiful move. I don't know which.
Well, clearly I did it once.
Yeah.
But why do I have to do that? Get Gitlin, give him his moment, and let him... But see, this is a closed shop, this board. We don't want to hear this.
So what's he mean about approaching the board?
I don't know.
Board?
I don't know when I can do that. We operate on an agenda. You've seen agendas.
Sure.
Item 1, 9, and 2. And I'm raising my hand. When do I get a chance to address the board? Is it at the very end of the meeting when I give everybody my report that this is what I did for the past week? When no one's in the audience? If that's what he means, he didn't explain it. He actually, in his email to me, he actually argued with me, which is not his role, as to why are you doing this, and this is not appropriate, and you voted unanimously. It's premature. You have your opinion, Mr. Chairman. You can go ahead and vote no. But you have to give me, even though I'm on the minority, the right to say why I am opposing this cannabis working group and its ability to function. And failure to do that really besmirches the board. It stains it. It says this is a closed shop. We only want to hear what we want to hear, and you're making noise. Now, I have something to say. When and how and where I will say it, I guess I have to think about now, because now you're telling me it's not going to be on the agenda.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess that...
And the reason, because any supervisor can put an item on there, what is his justification for the violation of that rule that's offered? There is none. Let him speak. He doesn't agree with you, so let the vote be 1-4. I don't know if that would be there, or 2-3. But it's not healthy, Paul. And really what it does is it makes matters worse.
Yeah.
Because I do have, and I'm not shy, Paul, I do have my Facebook, and I have my other ways to go out in the community and I have a radio station right here, Paul, and you're giving me the ability to say, and I hope you will ask me why I think this is a functionless group. It doesn't serve a purpose.
That actually, I was working toward that.
Okay,
I wanted to get into, because we were talking about that before.
That's all we're asking for. Let me make my case. And it's disappointing that the chairman has arbitrarily made this decision. It's not the first time he does this.
It does seem to be a dysfunctional relationship.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to the working group, because we were talking about this before we went live, and talking about how the just the premise of the working group you don't agree with. The working group created to come up with ordinances, suggest ordinances to the larger board, through the planning commissions, through all of the zoning commission, everything that needs to happen to sort of cradle the advent of recreational cannabis in Delaware County and make it a reality and make it one that is responsive to our particular situation in Delaware County. As such, then, the creation of this board was to sort of be a cross-section of every point of view. There, from the beginning, seems to have been a disconnect or some sort of, at odds sort of thing about the interpretation of that role. I always took it to mean we as a county had decided that recreational pot was going to happen. These people who have a vested interest as growers, as people who want to go into the retail business, and then also people who are in agriculture, who are the Smith River grower and the not a pot grower, but Westbrooks and Alexander's
and yes, sure.
People on the board
Lily
with the
growers.
know-how, the lily growers, and with the know-how, all coming together to come up with responsible ordinances. But that original premise of Prop 64 and its reality being sort of the underlying animating factor there. I guess you're saying...
Well, let me say it.
Okay, you say it.
Don't
You
say it for me.
Why? Okay.
Okay, let me
offer this as my understanding then, and then we can go from there. Is that by not incorporating more of an anti-pot voice, it is not representative of the county?
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay, now let me just say this so everybody hears this. Number one, I voted for that cannabis working group, and I did so reluctantly. I did so with the hope that of all the options, one of those options, Paul, was the permanent banning of recreational marijuana. That was an option offered by Prop 64 and the state of California. That has never been entertained. And I was disappointed, to say the least, that there is nothing. Everyone on that board seems to be moving in one direction. What about the option of banning it? Is anybody interested? Now, clearly, you don't have a cross-section of the community. If only one person, and this is Blake Alexander, when he came before our board last week, Blake Alexander, his wife, 2 of his adult children spoke passionately about their opposition to recreational marijuana, and he sold me. And I said, well, great, I'm glad to see that. On his first day as the chairman, and I say that in quotations because he's been absent a lot in that group, he saw 19 people. Now, the group is 7, but he saw 19 people who wished to be on that group. He was the only one who expressed his position as opposing recreational marijuana. There were 4 abstentions, which I can understand, especially from county workers who were on there, and the rest were somehow to mainstream this product into everyday life. Now, that to me, he said that, and I commended him for saying that you stood tall. And then I said, and I expressed my disappointment that he threw the towel in, because he's now trying to make a deal, which there is no deal to be made. It's a yes or a no. You don't blend this. We'll start small.
Why can't you compromise?
Okay, let me tell you why I can't. When in the final came out, everyone agrees we'll start small. The inference in that statement, Paul,
is that we'll get big.
Absolutely. Any blind person can see that when something starts small, it's not going to stay small. It's either going to disappear. It's to grow, it's going to get bigger. So it's disingenuous when someone says we're going to start small. Either you start it or you don't. And if you don't do it and you say it's going to keep small, it doesn't sell me. Now, I expressed my disappointment with Blake when he threw the towel in. I have a lot of respect for him, and he's a great dairy farmer.
Award-winning, yeah.
And I have nothing but respect for him and highly admire him. On this one, I'm disappointed, and I told him that. Now, what does this cannabis working group... Now, as I listen to these meetings day after week, and I'm looking, there's 58 counties in California. There's only one county, tiny little Delaware County, that has a cannabis working group. Why is that? It shields the supervisors from making the hard decision themselves.
And that was Bob's criticism of it back in February when he voted.
And that's mine today. I don't need a cannabis working group, which is, in my opinion, highly prejudiced and flawed, telling me, or telling our county attorney, Joel Campbell Blair, to make ordinance. This is what we agree on. And then the ordinance comes to us about the distances of how far back it's going to be from a school or a church and what have you. I have to retort this, and I said, Supervisor Gitlin, what are your parameters for a distance of setbacks? So I said the Humboldt County line on the south and the Curry County line on the north. And I think I threw Josephine County in there too. I said, it doesn't belong here. And I have that feeling today, and I will have that feeling tomorrow. And whether it's 2018 or, as you say, the 50s, the 2018, I guess if I'm alive in 2028, we can have the same conversation, and I'm going to tell you how I feel about it. 2058, 2098, it doesn't matter. Wrong is wrong. And I think this product is going to bring, and again, we can disagree.
No, we do disagree because you say wrong is wrong, and you say it in very black things, but wrong is wrong unless we're talking about 215.
Yeah, I have an issue with regard to compassion,
and so that's just it's just that you put it in such strident terms and you make it sound so black and white, but and you say there's no gray area, but there is a gray area, and
medicinal marijuana,
and you've made a judgment call about that gray area. So that's
and I'll answer to my voters with regard to that. When the voters say you're hurting my mother when you do this, and I said no, I'm not. I have to dispute it. Because they're different creatures.
Yeah, but the ban, if we don't have... So what happens January 1st? If the ordinances aren't in place, don't we lose everything in Delmore County?
Okay, no, hold on. I would like to see an ordinance on medicinal marijuana. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll be happy to vote for that. Okay. I would like to see that cannabis... You listen out there, guys? Make me an ordinance that embraces this compassion component that even Gitlin can live with. Now, you do that, you got my support. When you start going into, and again, I've said this will be the third time I say it, recreation and marijuana are non-analogous words. They don't belong in the same sentence. Now, Paul, you disagree with me, and a few others out there disagree with you, and I understand that. Let's just agree to disagree on this. We're not going to convince each other's minds on this. And if I decide to run again in 2020, and I haven't made that decision yet, you'll get your opportunity to throw me out or embrace me. Because I'm going to be straight on with you. I'm going to tell you how I am on this subject. And that's how I am. That's how I am on just about everything. Most people appreciate my directness.
Oh, no, and I do as well.
Yeah.
And I do as well.
You're not playing both sides against the middle. I'm not looking to be reelected based on a popularity statement. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be reelected on my core values. And whether it's cleaning up our community or getting involved with some issue or the constituent has some kind of a problem, SB 54, which is sanctuary state, there are so many subjects that I think our state has taken us in the wrong direction. And I'm going to speak up. And I'm going to speak up as long as the voters in District 1 want me to speak up. And this is a good example with this recreational marijuana. I don't believe it belongs in Delmore County. It's and what happens, this is a very good question you bring up of what's going to happen. They have a time frame in which to do this. Right now, we have a permanent ban on it. Now, they're compromising that, and they're looking to do this. The board voted 5-0 to make a permanent ban. You may want to ask them why they did that. And I know what the answer is, but I'll let them answer for you. Didn't the board vote 5-0 for an interim ban? No. And that the permanent ban was by default when you and Bob jumped ship on that? Well, you're a good observer. It wasn't any default. It's an active vote. They needed 4 votes to extend the interim ban 45 days. Mm-hmm. They got 3. Mm-hmm. Now, this put it back into the state's lap. Yeah. Well, the Chicken Little, the sky is falling. Oh, my God, this is awful. What are we going to do?
Which did not happen.
Okay. Mm-hmm. State, we met the next meeting, and, again, they thought the sky was going to fall. Oh, my God, the state's going to take over our business and what have you. And they voted, meaning all 5 of us voted, to put a permanent ordinance on there. Mm-hmm. Now, was the intention of that? It just worked out that way, and the 5 of us all agreed That was a rare solar eclipse.
Yeah, I know, huh? Especially on this topic, because I mean, I don't know why Bob votes the way he votes about anything.
Well, I do. You have to ask him one, and I've talked to Bob, and he has a different opinion on, and I respect that.
And I knew why you voted, and I knew why they voted for these things. I knew why all of that had happened. But Bob did end up being right about that. The sky did not fall. We had two permits, state licenses for sale issued in Delaware County to people who were already doing business here, and nothing happened. Prices, the real estate market didn't go crazy. Our water didn't turn green. Well, it is green already because of the serpentine, but it didn't turn brown because of the mud running off the hills. We sort of weathered this as a Del Norte entity, and that was reassuring for me. But then when everybody voted for this permanent ban, everybody knew why you voted for that. Everybody knew because you wanted that permanent ban to, in fact, be permanent.
That's what permanent means.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, Paul, you bringing up these points of, this is called political gamesmanship, and I'm not particularly good at it, but it worked. Now, I'm not looking to play a game here. I'm not looking to serve the greater good of Del Norte County, in my opinion, okay? Because that's why I'm in office. I'm not in there to be a robot, because the louder voices say, we want this, we want that. I have a lot of other not so loud voices who say, Gitlin, we want you to continue doing what you're doing. I'm not going to put, people don't like their names bandied about, but a lot of people say,
oh yeah, no. I'm not.
We support you. Now that's my fuel. If I knew that everyone didn't want that, even people who are of like-mind thinking, I might reevaluate and say, you know what, I'm not serving anybody's better interest by being obstinate. But I don't call it obstinate. I call it principled.
And is that what you need? Do you need? Is there a certain number of people before that you will hear from before principle becomes obstinate?
I don't think it's a. Again,
preponderance of evidence.
Political science is not a science.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay, it is. This is not an exact science, Paul. When you go into political office and you say, "I'm going to represent the people and I'm going to be your spokesman," there's an implication here that you will also be a leader. Just besides following and being an errand boy, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? How about leading by example? Now, I've made my argument to people who disagree with me in my district. And it's come home. It says, you're not wrong there. I understand that. Well, and they're trying to figure out, the voters trying to figure out how they can have this and how they can have that. Now, sometimes there's a collision, and you can't have everything you want. I believe recreational cannabis is a clear demarcation, black-white issue. There's no compromise. Either you're going to make it happen or it's not going to happen. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with this ordinance. I know that the Board of Supervisors will have to do something based on what the Cannabis Working Group is. The reason I don't support it is I think they're highly flawed. They're giving us information which does not represent the consensus of the county, even though they have now someone from the Yurok tribe on there. This is just an ongoing situation, and it speaks to the issue of me and my vote, and I only have one vote. I see some real fallacies in the functionability of this cannabis working group, that it's not objected, and they never did this group ever consider one of the options, which is a permanent ban on the product for Del Norte County. That was never discussed, and that, Paul, is disingenuous.
How is that disingenuous?
Because to me, you have an option.
Well, because to me that seems like it comes down to an interpretation of the premise upon which the working group was founded. And yours is that it should represent all points of view in Del Norte County. And I think the other way of looking at it is that we're starting with the premise of the passage of Prop 64, which happened in Del Norte County by a majority of voters. So let's start there. Bring the voices together, all the voices who will take that premise and run with it toward recreational marijuana. It seems like the definition of the point of view of Del Norte County is what's different. The creation of the working group happening after the passage of Prop 64, whereas to you, it seems that the working group, the Prop 64 is irrelevant because you start with the premise that if you're going to include all the voices in Del Norte County, it has to be yours as well, which is vehemently anti-recreational marijuana. I think I muddled that all up.
I don't think I would disagree with what you just said.
I
think actually the fact that the state passed a misguided law, and I do believe it is misguided, is something I would have lobbied to oppose. My state senator and my assembly member don't agree with me. which speaks to another issue altogether. Del Norte County is far more conservative than Humboldt, Sonoma, Mendocino, and Marin counties, and that's on the federal level. Mm-hmm. So we are here, this little red dragon's tail, and that's what it is. We want to do it our way. I don't think really, and the reality kind of bolsters my opinion here, that we matter much to those who are running for office on the state or national level.
Not at all.
What does it matter? No disrespect to the Senator McGuire, Assemblymember Wood, or Congressman Huffman, but what does he care whether he wins Del Norte County or not?
It's not going to make or break.
It's Marin, it's Sonoma, and it's the powerful counties to the south of us, which brings up another subject about realignment, and maybe we belong in another neighborhood. 2020. We'll talk about that later.
All right. We're coming up on the noon o'clock hour.
I promised you a good interview. Am I doing it?
It's always a good interview. Let's end with something positive. Let's go. We started with positive stuff that the board has been doing. Let's go back and revisit that. What else is happening that you feel that the people of Del Norte County don't know about the work of the Board of Supervisors?
Well, there are
what are you guys getting right?
A lot of good things are coming. I just finished observing a great project. Gosh, what a wonderful project! It's called the Hillside Stabilization Plan up in Hyuchi, and the talented folks at the Big Rock Community Services District meandered a maze of grants, ending up with 3 grants totaling $3.3 million with FEMA mm-hmm. and Cal Office of Emergency Services, totaling $3.3 million to replace a 50-year-old redwood tank mm-hmm. that holds, I believe, 50,000 gallons, and they're replacing it with a steel corrugated state-of-the-art with bigger pump system with 100,000. Mm-hmm. Now, they also have a second tank that will be addressed next year. They're also going to stabilize the mountains, South Hyuchi Mountain, so that when and if we have an earthquake, which compromises the water tank there that'll be replaced, we're going to have a solid mountain there. Mm-hmm. And that's $3.3 million worth of it. And I'm not going to name them names of all the people who did a great job on there, but this protects the community of Hyuchi and keeps them with a steady flow of water, good water. And, the Park Service is doing more business, and they're having more visitors coming in and building more cabins, and the need for water is real. Mm-hmm. So that's one great thing, and they started the work already. It was just this past week, and they'll be moving on to completion sometime in March, April. And again, my hat's off to this Big Rock Community Service District for effectuating that. And you don't hear about it, but that's other things. The other good stuff, again, I'm challenged to think about the immediate. We're doing lots of blight abatement projects. Mm-hmm. One coming up next week. We're partnering with Smith River Alliance, Take a Bite Out of Blight, and we're going to do our beach cleanup in Elk Valley in the Elk River, and then, but we're going to gather our volunteers. We're going to meet, I think, at the Front Street Park in the kids' play area, where all the equipment is. Mm-hmm. I think 9:00 on September 15th. So we need volunteers.
Okay,
and then we're gonna clean up that area where some human beings have messed it up, and hopefully with the understanding that we can help those folks mm-hmm. and go from there. And that'll be our 39th project since 2013. Wow. Yeah, wow. We've done, and a lot of them. Well, Gitlin, how are you naming these projects? We don't even identify them, but trust when I say, when there's a utility box that's been graffitied up, when there is graffiti on the wall of some business, and it's gone within a couple of days, just know that we've involved ourselves in a cleanup. I'm not going to name the spots because we'll get all the graffiti people out there speaking up. But there have been a lot of small cleanups that we've organized together, and we answer the folks' needs. So they call us because they see a problem, and then it gets solved. And those are all projects, and this will be our 39th. Some are bigger than others. But again, I say this, at zero cost to the county.
Yeah.
It's free.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. And thank you for that. 39. That's amazing because, we have disagreed about a lot of things, but I've always respected what you've done with that since probably back in 2013 when I'm driving down Washington and across Washington from Walmart. You're out in that where they had like the double wide like model home over there.
Yeah.
You're out in that field all by yourself picking up trash, and I go, okay.
Yeah, actually, you caught me at a time when we were expecting a few other people there, so it wasn't just me. But we're not doing. Look, Paul, I'm not here to get that proverbial pat on the back. There's a book that I'm going to write one of these days. It's called "Sometimes They Don't Say Thank You." I'm not there to self-aggrandize. Oh, listen, what wonderful! I'm there to make the place where I live a better place to live. Mm-hmm. I want to see this place. Again, I've said this before. It's 105 degrees everywhere else around the state and the country. Smoky, you know what? We have paradise here.
Yep.
And I want to see that to a point where we have more people coming up here to enjoy this magnificent place we all call Crescent City in Del Norte County.
And that, I think, is a fine place to end and a fine place to begin as well. If we all start with that premise, is that we live in paradise, let's do what we can collectively to keep it that way.
Always a pleasure.
Roger, thank you very much for coming in today. Good talking to you again. We will do it again soon. Let's get back into the music here. I'm going to get another cup of coffee. You're listening to KFUG Community Radio.